Welcome to Mr. Multicultural. My name is Bobby A. Sayed. I'm the founder of the Emma Awards. We at Emma recognize multicultural excellence throughout our metropolitan environment and cosmopolitan communities since we started in 1997. Let's go into the heart of this story that will hopefully inspire or even motivate you to overcome your own obstacles in life with one of our great Emma winners, Dr. Martin Luther King, as we look at how he took on institutional racism in America. With his experience of direct racism at the age of 6 years old, and he never allowed hate to undermine his campaign for true equality. Before I go any further, please like, comment and subscribe to our channel to promote true equality regardless of your race, color or religion. At the end, we will reveal those 5 things that made him the multicultural man we all know today. Now let's first hear from the late Yolanda King, the eldest child of Dr. Martin Luther King, who received the award on behalf of the whole King family to honor her father's great legacy at the Emmas. And then we will tell you how it all started.
Thank you so very, very much. All of us are participants in the creation of the present and the future, whether we like it or not. Either way we go, through silence and inertia, or through our raised voices, through work that activates and motivates, or that which produces slumber, whether we commit ourselves to what can be or passively accept what is. Either way we go, all of us are participants. I am so honored to be able to receive this award this evening from an organization that has chosen to actively participate in the creation of a better present and future. On behalf of my family, my mother, Coretta Scott King, my brothers, my sister, and myself, we want to express our tremendous gratitude to the NatWest Emma Awards, to Bobby Syed and his team for this incredible honor. It assures us that 35 years after my father was taken from us, his spirit lives on. In you, it has taken root in you and is blossoming into tremendous and magnificent fruit. It is absolutely appropriate that you would honor Martin Luther King Jr. through this organization that is promoting excellence in cultural diversity. In 1964, when my father accepted the Nobel Peace Prize, he said, "Though we have learned to fly the air like birds and swim the seas like fish, we have not learned the simple art of living together as brothers and sisters." As an actor and producer, I have seen firsthand the power of the arts to bring us together, to celebrate diversity, to help us to understand and to embrace our commonalities and our differences. For after all, we should celebrate difference until difference doesn't make a difference in how we treat each other. That's the goal. And so thank you, Emma Awards, for what you are doing to move us closer to achieving that goal. I salute you, and I urge you to continue taking us higher and higher. Thank you. God bless you. We love you.
Martin Luther King Jr. was born on the 15th of January 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, and was the second of 3 children to the Reverend Michael King Sr. and Alberta King. Dr. King and his siblings were born into a financially secure middle-class family and thus received better education than the average child of an African-American heritage. Still, life was hard for African Americans who had to live through the racial segregation system, which separated people of opposite ethnicities in almost every aspect of life. It was the early age of 6 that Dr. King first experienced racial prejudice, when the father of a white boy across the street stopped him from playing with his son. After that, Dr. King's parents explained the history of violence and oppression that black people had faced in the US, which made him initially hate white people. However, his parents advised him that it was his Christian values to love everyone. At 13 years old, Dr. King enrolled at a public high school for African Americans in the state of Georgia. There he became known for his public speaking ability and proceeded to join the school's debate team. A little later, he became the youngest assistant manager of a newspaper delivery station for the Atlanta Journal. His understanding and experience of racial discrimination grew throughout his early age. He recalls his father leading hundreds of African Americans through Atlanta to challenge for their voting rights and other instances of being forced to give up his seat on public transport for white passengers. Whilst in his final year of attending Morehouse College, he would take his first step in activism by writing a letter to the editor of the Atlanta Constitution. He demanded that African Americans were entitled to the basic rights and opportunities of American citizens. In 1953, Dr. King married fellow Boston University student Coretta Scott. They would go on to have 4 children together, Yolanda, Martin, Dexter, and Bernice King. In December 1955, a black woman by the name of Rosa Parks was arrested in Montgomery, Alabama, for refusing to give up her seat on a bus. Dr. King and other activists protested against the system for this and created the Montgomery bus boycott, which lasted for 385 days. It was the first large-scale US demonstration against segregation, but during the boycott, Dr. King was arrested and harassed for his involvement. However, it was a success. The US Supreme Court ultimately ordered Montgomery to integrate its bus system, and Dr. King emerged as a prominent spokesman of the civil rights movement and a national figure. In 1957, Dr. King and other African American ministers and civil rights activists founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference to lead a non-violent protest in southern states like Birmingham and Selma. Birmingham, Alabama was described at the time to be the most segregated city in America, and non-violent protests were met with a violent retaliation from the police force. What started as a bus boycott became a national movement. In October 1960, Dr. King participated in a sit-in inside Atlanta's largest departmental store. Many people were arrested that day, including himself. The authorities released everyone over the next few days, except for Dr. King, who was taken from his county jail cell and transported to a maximum security state prison. In this election year, both candidates, Kennedy and Nixon, declared themselves to be pro-civil rights, but only Kennedy placed calls to local political authorities, and King was finally released 2 days later. It was during this event that Dr. King wrote his now famous letter from Birmingham jail. By the start of the 1960s, there was a great progress in removing segregated restrictions through America. Passengers could sit wherever they pleased on buses and trains. White and colored signs came down, and public toilets became accessible to all. In August 1963, Dr. King and more than 250,000 people of all ethnicities participated in the March on Washington. Its purpose was to put pressure on President Kennedy to act on his promises regarding civil rights and providing equal opportunities for all. It was on this date that Dr. King delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech, which is undoubtedly remembered as one of the greatest speeches in American history. The Monumental Civil Rights Act was passed in July 1964, making racial discrimination legal and ending the Jim Crow era of segregation across the US. Later that year, Dr. King became the youngest ever person to win the Nobel Peace Prize for combating racial inequality through non-violent resistance. Less than 6 months later, President Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965, creating another huge step in the civil rights movement. 1 year before his death, Dr. King delivered a speech strongly protesting against the American involvement in the Vietnam War. He connected the war to economic injustice, arguing that the country needed a serious moral change. By showing opposition to the war, it cost him significant support amongst his white allies, including President Johnson, Billy Graham, and powerful publishers. But in doing so, he stayed true to his search for peace. In Memphis, Tennessee, black sanitation workers went on strike in 1968, fighting for better conditions and equal treatment to the white workers. On his first visit to the city, which resulted in over 280 arrests, Dr. King returned and delivered his final speech. "I've been to the mountaintop." Dr. King was fatally shot the next day by James Earl Ray on the 4th of April 1968 as he stood on the second floor balcony outside the motel room in Memphis that had led to a national mourning during his funeral. The assassination led to a nationwide wave of race riots across Washington, D.C., Chicago, Baltimore, Louisville, Kansas City, and many other areas across the U.S. The aftermath and rioting following Dr. King's death led to the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, which expanded the rights that were passed in the 1964 bill. We were lucky enough to have the late Yolanda King attend the Emma show to celebrate Dr. King's life and achievement, from which we can all appreciate the journey he has taken and the difference he has made to the world. These are the 5 things that made Dr. Martin Luther King the multicultural man we all know today. And as one of our Emma winners, and hopefully it will inspire or even motivate you to make a big difference in our world. He is the champion who helped to establish the civil rights movement in the United States against all the odds, with the Jim Crow policy ever present. If you think racism today is bad, however covert it is, then the overt racism previously had humiliated all minorities, hence the peaceful campaign to create that change by so many unsung heroes. Number 1. His desire to create an impact stemmed from an early age, from being told he was no longer allowed to play with his white friend at the age of 6 years old, and to experience of the racial discrimination on public transport. He knew change was needed even at the age of 6 because social and cultural discrimination was something he would never accept, as shown throughout his life work. Number 2. He used his influence to kickstart what would be the first major introduction to the civil rights movement through the Montgomery bus boycott, and by 1961, new policies were being introduced to remove the segregation system. This was only the start to challenge those Jim Crow policies that played large parts of the United States and promote human rights that the US Constitution had claimed it stood for. Number 3. Despite his leadership, change didn't come easy. A year before a series of new policies went into effect, Dr. King was transported to a maximum security state prison, but was thankfully released 2 days later. The fact that the US prison system has more African Americans in prison to the proportion of the population does highlight how easy it is to criminalize a large section of the population, or even murder, as shown through the death of George Floyd. Number 4. The civil rights that he and many others strived for became a reality in 1963. His inspiring I Have a Dream speech from 1963 paved the way for the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and 1968, which truly marked the end of Jim Crow era and racial segregation in America. However, as much as overt racism was taken on then, there seems to be an issue around covert racism that many have started to highlight after the sad murder of George Floyd. Number 5. He has left behind an extraordinary legacy that has inspired millions across the world, sending the message that we should fight for what we believe in, no matter what the odds. A country has to be judged by how well they treat its own minority community, not by having tokens, but creating a genuine inclusion policy that many, like Dr. Martin Luther King, had campaigned for. As he has shown, doing nothing is never an option, especially if you want a better future for your children. We have only touched upon Dr. Martin Luther King's unique history, and there's a lot more information out there for anyone to research and to appreciate the difference he has made. And he's very much part of our multicultural family. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. And if possible, please donate on Patreon, however little the amount, to support this channel's ongoing mission to undertake multicultural campaigns. Please share this video, as we believe a person should be judged by their character, not by their race, color or religion at Mr. Multicultural. And remember, it's what's inside that counts, a motto we've used at the Emmas. Now let's leave you with these last words from the late Yolanda King at the Emmas, where we honored her father, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
The power of the arts to bring us together, to celebrate diversity, to help us to understand and to embrace our commonalities and our differences. For after all, we should celebrate difference until difference doesn't make a difference in how we treat each other. That's the goal. And so thank you, Emma Awards, for what you are doing to move us closer to achieving that goal. I salute you, and I urge you to continue taking us higher and higher. Thank you. God bless you. We love you.